Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, welcome back. We just did this like 24 hours ago. We're doing it again. How are you?
I'm good. So let's see. We did a Saturday stream for a game and a Saturday night reaction to all of the game stream. We did Ohio State, Indiana. Then yesterday we did a reaction stream for the college football playoff selection show. And then Friday, I want to say, we did a bonus recording that's on YouTube, and maybe the audio's out there on Patreon at verballers.com about the Matt Campbell hire.
That's right.
So we've been going at it. I can't get enough time.
My voice yesterday morning sounded like Kirk Herbstreit's voice yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, it did.
It was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. I was drinking a lot of the tea with the honey and all that, so I think I've revived it enough to go at this again and record a little bit more with you.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a lot to discuss. I mean, of course, go back and listen to the bonus episode, the bonus audio that you and I recorded. It's out there on your podcast feed. It's out on YouTube as well. Sort of a two-parter this past weekend. Part one was what we normally do at midnights, where we recap all the action. We talk through all the conference championship games. And then what we put together and then published, of course, to the feed yesterday was our reaction to the playoff rankings and the matchups and whatnot. We're going to talk through a little bit more of that on today's episode, but there's a bunch of news that's been building up. You gave away the game a little bit by talking about Penn State and Matt Campbell.
Yeah,
but
people are just finding out now through the show that it happened. Spoiled it.
We haven't talked about that yet on the public feed, so we're gonna do that here, in addition to a bunch of other items that have popped up since we last reviewed the news. We are going to talk through some early college football playoff thoughts. We do have 4 matchups, our first rounders that we're going to go through, give you point spreads now. When we recorded yesterday, we didn't have those.
Yeah.
So we'll talk through those and just some elements of the matchups that jump out to us. And then we're going to go through some of the bowl matchups as well. Not a full-fledged preview or anything like that, but there are some interesting matchups. There are some interesting news stories that come out of these bowl matchups as well, which we can dive into here in just a little bit as well.
I got it. By the way, I got it. I'm interrupting you. I got to tell you, I'm a little bit surprised as a Notre Dame person, Ty, that you opted into recording an episode about the postseason. I'm a little surprised that you just didn't release a statement to me exclusively. You know, ultimately, I'm disappointed that Notre Dame is not in the college football playoffs.
Listen, the relationship is strained. I think those were Pete Bavacqua's words with respect to Notre Dame and the ACC.
Thank you for your
relationship,
courage, Ty.
you and I, right now.
Yes, thank you for your courage.
We got that. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to get into.
Yeah.
As I was saying, hit follow.
Yes.
Hit subscribe if you like the show, if you want to support what we do. We'll be with you 3 times a week all throughout the offseason. I should add that what we're going to start doing, since we don't want to record on the weekends anymore unless we have to.
Of course.
We're going to be running interviews on Sundays now. So we're going to be doing longer interviews throughout the course of the week. You and I, in some cases, will trade off. In some cases, it'll be both of us. But either way, you will have fresh content at your fingertips for free. Yes.
Of course.
Right here on YouTube, right here in your podcast feed, wherever it is you consume the show. You've got that to look forward to throughout the month of December and probably beyond.
Yeah, agree. Can't wait. Got some good people.
Absolutely. All right.
The coaching
Carousel.
Dan Rubenstein, you know what the roar means, don't you?
Of course. There's just a lot of energy and enthusiasm. Sure.
It does mean that. It also means we've got more coaching hires to discuss on the show. Chief among them is what you alluded to a few moments earlier. Pat Kraft has made it official. He has shot off the white smoke. He has a guy up at Penn State. It took forever, 54 days, but Matt Campbell is the hire. They actually had their introductory presser a little bit ago. I watched the whole thing. This is a hire that, as you know, this process took a bunch of strange turns. It started with a bunch of the biggest names in the coaching profession, all of whom seemingly turned Penn State down. Kalani Sitake was heavily rumored to the position, but then the BYU community stepped up. However that news leaked, I do not know, but
that's how the cookie crumbles, Ty.
That is how the cookie crumbles. Very, very good.
Thank you.
BYU stepped up in a big way to retain their guy, Kalani Sitake. And it got a little hairy there towards the end, not going to lie, but Pat Kraft eventually finds his guy in Iowa State's Matt Campbell, Dan. Matt Campbell's been rumored to a bunch of big positions.
Or at least there's reported interest in one direction or the other. But yes, especially some of those bigger Big Ten jobs that have opened up these past few years, his name has come up, and he seemingly has not expressed that much interest. At least it hasn't seemed that way outwardly.
I think this is an enormous hire for Penn State.
Okay.
I mean, not just in terms of the gravity of it, given circumstances with letting go of James Franklin after he had been very successful at Penn State for an eternity. But I think they got a really good guy in Matt Campbell. As I said, he's been rumored to a bunch of other college football openings. The NFL came calling for Matt Campbell not too long ago. Matt Campbell is not a guy who jumps around. He said as much at his press conference. He has been tremendously loyal at the places that he has been. You can just listen to his former athletic director at Iowa State, Jamie Pollard, talk about him. I mean, he was emotional. Voice cracked a lot talking about the relationship that he had with Matt Campbell, what Matt Campbell did at Iowa State. If Penn State gets half of the guy that Matt Campbell was at Iowa State, this is a home run hire.
Yeah.
So when I heard this, I will admit, if I had heard this 7 days into the process, I may not have been enamored with it because Matt Campbell's a low-key guy. It certainly is not the flashiest hire. But now, given the strange turns that this coaching search has taken, the fact that Matt Campbell now fell off the back of a friggin' truck and into the waiting and desperate arms of Pat Kraft and Penn State University, it's A+ at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. It is A+ given context. The fact that it took so long to get here, that's probably a story for another day. By the way, I'm going to have Matt Fortuna on with me at some point here, probably later part of this week. You'll hear that interview. He's got great details on how the coaching search evolved and all that. So we'll go into that in more detail with Matt. But the fact that it arrived here at a place now where everybody, I think, is pretty comfortable with the hire, this is a success story for Penn State, for Pat Kraft, and hopefully for Matt Campbell.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, look, no coaching hire is a sure thing, but I think there are pretty obvious questions about Matt Campbell and Penn State, the least of which is like, what does he look like building a roster? Obviously, what does he do with that roster and the uphill battle he has in a conference with now the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country in Indiana and Ohio State heading into the playoff that are going to be on his schedule at some point, either during the regular season or in the postseason. You've got Oregon. You've got maybe a Michigan team that could be potentially ascending in the next couple of years. It's a difficult spot for Penn State to start over from. But obviously Penn State's starting point is in an advantaged one because of how large this operation can be. But that also begs the question, like, does he have the personality to run a much larger operation than what he had at Iowa State, which obviously he did a great job with what he had at Iowa State and did a very good job recruiting and won a bunch of games and, built good offenses, built good defenses, hired well for, the most part. Obviously there are some hires that don't work out for everybody, but what does that look like at a place that is larger and has much larger expectations than he's ever had to deal with? And that's why he's a head coach, right? You want those challenges. You want that competition. You want to measure yourself against the best. And so there's no reason to doubt this hire from do we think this is the right guy to grow into a role like this? I think it's absolutely one of the right guys that you can talk yourself growing into a place like this. So I do like it a lot.
He said 2 things at his introductory presser that, to me, stood out above all else. The first was, it was the last question in the Q&A bit where somebody asked him, tell us your roots about Penn State or to Penn State.
Yeah.
Have you ever met James Franklin? Have you ever met Bill O'Brien or Joe Paterno? Have you ever been here before? And Matt Campbell, I thought, was really, really...
He showed a lot of conviction and straightforwardness.
Yeah, I don't want to say calculated, because calculated that implies that there was some undertone of, there was some ulterior motive.
No.
But it was just really smart the way he answered that question.
Yeah, savvy.
And he said, the short answer is no to everything. I haven't been here before. I don't know James Franklin. I don't know Bill O'Brien. I didn't meet Joe Paterno. He had a relationship with Todd Blackledge's dad. He talked about how that was, an important relationship for him that helped sort of mentor him through his early days as a football player and as a coach. He talked about his grandparents in Pennsylvania and how they had an outsized influence on him just as people and how they were very passionate about Penn State football. But personally, given some of the strife that has been circling around this program now for a while, I like the fact that they're getting somebody from the outside completely.
Sure.
Maybe has regional ties to Penn State football, but does not have the baggage of having been at Penn State before, knowing any of the same people, that type of thing. If you're going to make this move, if you're Pat Kraft, if you're going to do away with a guy who was this successful for that long in State College, I would hope that it's somebody from the outside who's not going to continue any of the old ideas.
Right.
Going to start fresh or going to reboot now and see what we can build for the better moving forward. That was the first thing. The second thing, and this is a little bit more X and O-y, but he talked at length about how they built from the ground up their player acquisition model, their GM position over at Iowa State. It's much different than what Penn State was doing under James Franklin. And so I think a guy who, and he detailed this, you can go and listen to this if you want, but talked about how he and his partners at Iowa State built this from the ground up. He's got firsthand experience putting in that elbow grease, figuring out on the fly, as many programs did, how to navigate this new landscape in college football.
Yeah.
I think that will benefit him greatly because A, he's put in the work, he knows what goes into it, he understands the operation, and it's going to benefit Penn State in the long run because I think it will take their program to the next level. Again, this is something that we heard on that leaked audio that came out from Pat Kraft, how James Franklin was paying everybody on the roster instead of maybe allotting funds in a way that you're giving more to the guys who are doing more.
Yeah.
So I just think that there's going to be a total reboot on that side. And I honestly, that was the most exciting part of it. His demeanor fits the moment. I think Penn Staters are going to be very happy with just listening to this guy in an interview. But I think the more operational aspects of what he brings to the table here are really exciting.
Yeah. And look, it was intended to be recorded, which is new for Penn State with everything coming out of the program. No point did Matt Campbell call Oregon soft or a fraud, which I guess is like a new like high water mark.
We'll find out, man.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Those
That's
flashy
true.
uniforms. Can you beat JMU? I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see, man. 21 point, 22 points, somewhere in there.
We'll
Point
get
spread.
to that. We'll get to
Can't
that
wait.
in this show. So Penn State's got his guy. It took forever. It ended up well. If, in fact, this ends up working for Pat Kraft, he will have truly pulled a rabbit out of his you-know-where because this was a really effed up process. And again, I'm going to talk more about that with our friend Matt Fortuna. We'll talk about that and publish it to the feed a little bit later on in the week.
I mean, Matt Campbell did accept a $4 million raise, too. We should point out that he's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart.
No, 8 years, $70.5 million, I believe, fully guaranteed.
Yes, good for him.
Iowa State moved quickly, and I mean very quickly, to name his replacement. So quickly that they named their replacement before Penn State made it official with Matt Campbell.
They were ready, yeah.
They were ready for this. Jimmy Rogers is going to be the guy from Wazoo. I listened to Jamie Pollard, the AD again for Iowa State, talk through his relationship with Jimmy Rogers and why he went in this direction as quickly as he did. Jimmy Rogers, familiar with that part of the country, was a coach in South Dakota, has been successful in his own right, I think was good at Wazoo in the short time that he was there.
Yes.
He seems very excited about that move to Ames, Iowa. So hopefully Iowa State's got a good guy to fill their vacancy.
By the way, Wazoo this past year, all things considered, right? 2 straight years of losing your quarterback, your very good quarterback to the portal, bringing in a coach who was bringing in FCS players, competing with schools like take your pick, Virginia and Ole Miss, traveling all over the place because of a weird schedule, playing Oregon State twice, I think splitting with Oregon State.
Right.
I just thought he did a really good job in a very difficult situation. And so hopefully it's going to be a little bit more stable for Rogers in Ames. And I seem to like the hire. Like you like to hire winning coaches no matter the level, and he sort of fits that bill.
Another guy who is Matt Campbell adjacent is Jason Candle.
Yes.
Who took the UConn job. Jason Candle, another one of these guys who has been rumored for a bunch of other positions, been a good coach for a long time at Toledo. He is making the move over to UConn.
Rumored,
a surprising move.
Rumored to be interested in major program offensive coordinator jobs for a couple years there. I think Miami is a team with whom he spoke about an open coordinator job situation there. It just seems right now, especially when you look at Sean Lewis taking the Colorado, then eventual San Diego State, Colorado offensive coordinator job, San Diego State head coaching job, that making a leap right now from MAC head coach to power conference head coach or major G5 head coach might not be the most obvious path. Like there needs to be a move elsewhere. I mean, the UConn situation, I guess Jim Moore is at Colorado State now, but just seemed like he needed a change of scenery. Felt like he had hit his ceiling there. And by the way, just fallout from that, I think it's Vince Carras. I don't know how you pronounce it. I apologize, but he's a super well-regarded defensive coordinator, smaller school head coach before that. He is taking over at Syracuse. Very much in need of a new defensive thinker after this past season, and I think there's a lot of high hope for him after what he did at Toledo.
Charles Huff is going to Memphis. He was at Southern Miss for 1 year.
Yes.
That was after coming over from Marshall, bringing his whole team. Had a good year.
Yeah, one of the most improved teams. Yeah.
And we'll see if he brings the whole team with him to Memphis now or what the plan's going to be. But I think a good coach. A lot of people think highly of Charles Huff, and I think it's a good Memphis program. Look, they're getting money. They're getting that FedEx money. They were very much in the conversation for a good chunk of this year. Even before this year, Memphis has very much been one of those schools that's sort of on the top line when you're thinking a group of 5 programs. And get an opportunity, I guess, to go somewhere a little bit bigger with more resources.
Here's what I don't love. I think you're right. I think obviously the Memphis thing, he'll have, I think, the most resources in the American. Obviously, Southern Miss was one of the most improved teams in America this past year after how down they were in 24. I don't love one-and-done coaches. It always rubs me, like Jimmy Rogers to Iowa State. There's that element, and I know Washington State's in like a weird, unique thing with the conference changes and everything like that. I didn't love it with Todd Graham at, Pitt to Arizona State. Right. The one and done thing is just, it's kind of skeeves me out. The idea of going to a new place, getting everybody excited. This is how we're going to recruit. This is how we're going to retain the roster. This is how we're going to how we're going to hire. Here's how we're going to scheme, and just like bailing after 10 months or something, a year. I don't know. I don't love it. I know there's opportunities. I know you got to strike when the iron's hot. We've seen this before. Like, I see it and I think to myself, man, a bunch of kids just like got sold a bill of goods, and that sucks. I don't know.
Billy Napier is going to be the coach at JMU.
He is. I mean, value hire, right?
I think so. James Madison's been really good at hiring football coaches. Obviously, Kurt Signetti, that one worked.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, now with Bob Chesney, that one seems to have worked pretty well. They're a playoff team.
Yes.
Billy Napier, not that long ago, was the name. He was the name among G5 coaches that everybody wanted. I remember when he signed on with Florida, it was viewed as a slam dunk. It wasn't. It didn't work out. We can discuss at some other point, maybe on our Sunday interview series, why it didn't go the way that it was supposed to. But that being said, Billy Napier was very successful at this level before.
Yeah.
And you got to think that he learned some. I would hope he learned something from his time at Florida. And if you are a JMU Duke out there, at a minimum, you are getting a guy with previous coaching experience who's been around the block a bunch of times and clearly has coached at the highest level. So I actually think this is a brilliant move by JMU to get him sort of on the rebound at a bit of a discount. You definitely run the risk of being successful and him going to greener pastures at some point in the future. But This is the state of play. If you're a school like JMU, I commend them for going out and getting him because I think he can do really well there.
It's also, JMU is one of those places, and I say that like with a capital P, that sometimes places win and not necessarily coaches. And this is to take nothing away from any of those guys you mentioned. Also, Mike Houston had a really nice run at JMU before ECU. That sometimes places have the infrastructure, have the leadership, have the location, right? that JMU was one of those teams that made an impeccable leap from the FCS ranks to the FBS ranks. And you saw that with those coaches. And so, apparently Harrison, I've never been to Harrisonburg, Virginia. People seem to think it's a really terrific gem of a college town.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I think it's one of those situations that if Billy Napier doesn't succeed in this role, it almost makes it very obvious it's a Billy Napier thing, not a JMU thing, when the three guys who preceded him had the success that they did. So hope that they can keep it going because it's been a cool story there in the Sun Belt. Also, obviously, a winnable conference.
A very winnable conference. Sun Belt Billy back at it.
Yes.
with a different Sun Belt team.
Mm-hmm.
Tulane has promoted Will Hall, the offensive coordinator. They are promoting from within. There were a bunch of big names that were tied to that Tulane job. Blake Baker is one, comes to mind at LSU, the defensive coordinator who decided he's going to stay
Chris
at
Hampton.
LSU.
Yeah,
I heard a bunch of names that were tied to this one, but they're promoting from within, hoping to keep the train rolling. Tulane obviously is going to be playing in a playoff game. We will talk about that momentarily as well.
Hope to keep the wave foaming. How
That's
about that?
good.
Not bad. I got a good night's
that.
sleep last night, Ty. I hope you can tell.
I'm pretty excited about the uniform game that we're going to see on display. Tulane's got some of the best home, away, and alternate jersey combinations in college football.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that sort of under the bright lights of the college football playoff is pretty cool. I'm excited about that.
It's a baby blue rematch because obviously Ole Miss's shade of baby blue and Tulane's shade of, I think Tulane's a little bit lighter. And I wouldn't count on Ty Hildenbrandt to point out the specifics on shades with his.
You could tell me it's red. I'd believe you. I have no idea.
Ty has maybe D+ eye awareness at this moment.
My eyes are fine. I can't see color.
Right. So. I'm saying I don't know what part of is your retinas, whatever it is. But you're right that this should be, even though it's a rematch on the football field for a game I don't think a lot of people wanted to watch 45-10 part 2 after what Ole Miss did to them earlier this season. Obviously, Tulane had a very good year otherwise. It's a great uniform matchup, absolutely.
And then on the assistant front, Dan.
Yes.
You already mentioned that Syracuse hired a new defensive coordinator, but there are a couple other coordinators that are out and about.
Yes, there are.
Brent Pry is coming back, baby.
I love this so much. We've got two of these, right? It's Brent Pry and we have Zach Arnett at Mississippi State.
Brent Pry is coming back as defensive coordinator for Virginia Tech. I had heard a couple other names attached to that one, and never once was Brent Pry ruled out of that conversation, which I found odd at the time, but it sounds as though he kind of parted ways on decent enough terms with Virginia Tech. He liked the area. I think a lot of people liked him, but I saw it was floating around online. It killed me. The clip of George Costanza walking back in after he had been fired, after he quit the day before, and acting as if nothing happened. Right. That's essentially what we're getting here with Brent Pry. He's coming back at it. Going to be coaching the defense.
One of the things, and again, fact check me, I could be totally way off here, but I want to say I saw this in a couple of different places, that one of the things Brent Pry did really well at Virginia Tech was sort of mend fences locally with a lot of high schools in the state of Virginia that Justin Fuente did not do a terrific job, reportedly, in terms of relationships and recruiting and stuff like that. And what Brent Pry did with Virginia Tech was almost invaluable, even though the results weren't there on the field, that Virginia Tech's network has sort of regenerated in the high school ranks. And obviously, they're going to be very portal heavy for the next year or two and just getting the floor up at Virginia Tech to where James Franklin wants it to be. But if you have somebody like that in the fold and relationships internally seem to be fine, like you mentioned with Brent Pry, it's weird, it's novel, it's unorthodox, but fired coach, new role, okay.
I mean, if James Franklin is basically able to reconstitute some version of his Penn State operation at Virginia Tech, it's a home run.
Sure.
That in and of itself would be a home run in Blacksburg because they needed that. And now they're renewing their investment in the football program. What was the number? Something like $229 million, maybe more, that they're going to inject into the operation. So, look, there's a lot of reason, I think, to be optimistic about where this goes. And Just look at the ACC this year. Look at the ACC last year.
Right.
You could build a program quick in the ACC. You can make some serious hay. You can do it. And Franklin's going to try, so he's keeping Brent Pry around. You mentioned the Zach Arnett thing at Mississippi State. He is coming back in the fold. So we got another one of these situations. He wasn't just fired.
Yeah.
He wasn't just fired this year, as Pry was, but alas, we're going to have that happen. We've got Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator from Georgia Tech, who's going to go to Florida. They have also made a hire at defensive coordinator, Brad White, going to come down from Kentucky.
Yes, a good amount of success.
Assistants.
Yeah.
Buster Faulkner was a name that was floating around many circles, many openings. Brad White has obviously been very, very good for a long time up at Kentucky. So that staff down at Florida taking form for John Summerall. We've got Joe Rossi retained as defensive coordinator up at Michigan State for Pat Fitzgerald, their new coach. We've got a new offensive coordinator at Kentucky, Joe Sloan, coming over from LSU. He is being hired now by Will Stein, the new head guy at Kentucky, to run that offense. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that one because Joe Sloan was very much sort of a boogeyman at LSU with the way the offense had played recently under Brian Kelly. They made a change at that position, but Will Stein, an offensive mind, familiar with the state of Kentucky, he is tabbing Joe Sloan to be his dude.
Right. Look, Joe, if you want to spin it positively, Joe Sloan was Jaden Daniels, I think, the quarterback coach at LSU when he won the Heisman and helped to develop into the first-round talent and successful NFL quarterback that he is now. Look, when you have Will Stein as your head coach, you might also have Will Stein as your offensive coordinator. And Joe Sloan might just be handling quarterbacks more than anything. And certainly he'll be game planning and helping to design the architecture of the offense, but I would suppose that this is going to be a Will Stein offense more than anything. I don't know if they've said anything about calling plays. Will Stein's offense at Oregon has led the nation in EPA the past 3 years. And I think Will Stein exclusively, or at least not exclusively, because I don't think Dante Moore is going to be a Heisman finalist, but had 2 Heisman finalist quarterbacks in Bo Nix.
Is it leading the nation
Gabriel?
in EPA because of the talent on hand or because of the scheme?
There's a lot of schools that have talented players that are nowhere near first in the country in EPA, including LSU and Joe Sloan's, right? A lot of talent on that offense. Didn't sniff that. So yes, I think it's one thing to acquire talent. It's another thing to develop it and then game plan and execute in games. Did so in the Big Ten, a major conference. So I don't think you can make any sort of case that Will Stein is an average offensive mind. I think he's excellent. Oregon, and we'll see what they do in this year's playoff with Will Stein calling the offense ahead of us with a potential first round quarterback talent in Dante Moore. They've had a really, really good offense, and I think in the SEC and where Kentucky is and the financial commitment that they seem to be giving Will Stein, they're going to be able to find more Wan'Dale Robinson's best case scenario, right? That you're going to be able to look at what Oregon did. You're going to be able to sell what Will Stein did at Oregon in developing quarterbacks and receivers and offensive linemen, whatever, that he is going to be able to find guys to succeed at Kentucky in a way that Kentucky hasn't seen consistently ever in the modern era. So I think it's a good thing. Well,
they've had the same coach there forever,
yes,
and it's always been a little bit more defensive-minded. So it'll be nice to see what they can do on the offensive side of the ball with a guy like Will Stein. First big job. Obviously, he's been at big places, but curious to see how this shapes up around him. Again, Joe Sloan going to be the OC. And the only other one I have here in terms of coordinators, we do have one other one that I want to discuss after this.
Please.
But Ryan Silverfield made a hire as Ron Roberts to be his new defensive coordinator at Arkansas. So bear in mind, this is an Arkansas team that did not play defense for 2 years running.
No.
And I know this is a hire in particular that Arkansas fans were interested in. Which direction is he going to go? He chooses Ron Roberts.
Yes. I mean, the sort of SEC institutional knowledge, given his recent time at Auburn and Florida, I think is pretty good since Ryan Silverfield's institutional SEC knowledge is limited. I don't think Ron Roberts, given the ups and downs, I think he's older as well. Maybe you can fact check me on that. I don't think he's a long-term guy, but in terms of like setting up the infrastructure of like an average SEC defense, an up and down SEC defense, you could do worse.
Only 58 years old.
Oh, okay, not bad.
He's not
It just sounds like an old guy, Ron Roberts.
And he's also been everywhere.
Yeah, right. He was at Baylor with Dave Aranda. Yep.
For a long time. Yeah, he was at Florida a couple of years ago, or the last 2 years, I should say, last 2 seasons. Sort of came in and supplanted Austin Armstrong, right? That ended up being more of a Ron Roberts job.
Yep.
And
had a very good reputation at Louisiana as well.
Yeah. So they're getting somebody with a bit of a track record. And I think if you're an Arkansas fan, the reason we put it down on the sheet is because we know that obviously defense has been a primary concern now as they enter this new territory with Ryan Silverfield. The other name here that I want to bring up, we don't talk a ton about offensive line coaches, but this is one that I think has real relevance. Nebraska has fired Donovan Raiola.
Yes.
Their offensive line coach. The last
Sacked
name,
him, if you will, Ty. Sacked him.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
The last name sounds perhaps familiar to those of you listening at home. He is related to Dylan Raiola. He was one of the main reasons why Dylan Raiola is there. So if you want to play a little bit of like jump to conclusions, could this mean that Dylan Raiola is also going elsewhere? That seems to be the smoke as of late.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why it's the smoke. I don't know if he did the always terrifying cleared all of his social media of all references to Nebraska. I have no idea. But obviously, Dylan Raiola was somebody whose recruitment was sort of all over the place in terms of commitments. I think with Ohio State and Georgia before Nebraska. His high school career was sort of all over the place. So it wouldn't be surprising. I can't speak with authority about what he's thinking in this moment. But I think the Nebraska fan sentiment was, we've got to sort of treat the offensive line coach with kid gloves so we don't upset the quarterback.
That's right.
And so if the quarterback's already upset and perhaps thinking about his future, the change at offensive line coach seemed kind of necessary if his last name were, Friedman or something. So they've quickly, made a move. I think they hired Georgia Tech's offensive line coach.
Yes.
Is it Jeep Wade? Yes. Is that how you pronounce it? Jeep? I always get confused by the Geep. It might be Geep. It might be. Do you have any inclination? Jeep or Geep?
No idea. I don't know.
And they also hired a new defensive coordinator after a pretty disappointing defense this past year under John Butler. They hired, was it Rob Orich?
Yep.
From San Diego State.
Yeah.
So they're being very proactive, which I think good for Nebraska, because even quarterback injury aside, there were a lot of rooms in that house for improvement.
Yeah, and it's such a shame too, because I know you and I differ a little bit on our opinion of Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
But he was done no service by his offensive line. The offensive line now, both years with him as starting quarterback, has just been dreadful.
Right.
And so it's really tough, and I know that there's frustration in the Nebraska community. They were never truly able to see Dylan Raiola's ceiling. At least they haven't yet. Now, maybe he'll stay. I'm not privy to anything. It seems, though, that the writing is on the wall that he might be headed elsewhere. So if he ends up hitting the portal, that would clearly be a big name that I think would get a lot of interest from places around college football that might be looking for a quarterback. And, it's literally every program that might be looking for a quarterback would probably be interested in Dylan Raiola. Because he definitely has a lot of raw tools that are exciting.
He has a first-round arm. There's no question about that.
For sure. So where he ends up, if he does go in the portal, that will be something that we cover here. But, yeah, with Relation leaving the program as offensive line coach, perhaps the writing is on the wall there.
By the way, you could just see watching Nebraska this year offensively that we've talked about seeing ghosts, right? When coverages are confusing for certain quarterbacks and they're throwing it into areas they thought would be clear, and there's three dudes fighting over the interception, or they're not throwing it there because they think dudes are there. There was something about watching Dylan Raiola and his footwork that even when he had a clean pocket, he almost felt like a ghost pass rush, that there was something that he felt hurried up even in times he didn't need to feel hurried up, and that's just because of the scar tissue I think he developed, like the emotional scar tissue behind playing behind a line that was pretty disappointing at times. And so it led to such an arrhythmic offense that it just felt like They needed somebody new. I'm glad they found somebody that hopefully can improve things. And whether it's Dylan Raiola, whether it's somebody else at quarterback, you'd like an issue to be addressed after 4 years or whatever successfully. So hopefully this is the guy, this is the year.
I'm going to move on here. I want to talk about something else. But before I do, just an FYI, we kind of did a speed run there of new coach hires, some of which we talked about in greater detail than others. We also are going to be doing a coach-only show where we talk about coaches and we talk about rumors and we talk about much of what went on this coaching carousel cycle that we've been on over the last couple of weeks, because obviously there's been a lot to talk about. We want to make sure we give it its due. We're going to give it its own show here in short order. So stay tuned for that, but a little preview as to what's to come.
For your consideration on any podcast player, search Solid Verbal, find us, and hit follow or subscribe. It's just that easy.
You want to talk some playoff matchups?
Sure.
This New Year's Eve will be so awesome. The stars have all aligned.
Dan Rubenstein, your 4 first-round matchups. We talked about him yesterday. I'll talk about him again now. Got Oklahoma squaring off against Alabama. They are playing host to that one in Norman. Alabama is a 1.5 point road favorite.
Yes.
We've also got Texas A&M playing host to Miami. A&M is favored by 4. We've got the 6th seed, Ole Miss Rebels, a 16.5 point home favorite over Tulane. As you mentioned earlier, they beat them 45-10 earlier in the year. And last but certainly not least, your Oregon Ducks, the 5 seed, playing host on Saturday night, December the 20th, to James Madison, the 12 seed. Got in by virtue of Duke winning the ACC and all that rigmarole. Can't let the 5-loss team in. That'd be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
JMU going to be making the trip out to the Pacific Northwest. So those are our first round matchups. Wanted to give ourselves a little bit more of an opportunity to offer any early thoughts we have on these matchups. We did, again, a speed run of them yesterday when we reacted to the playoff field. But now with the benefit of about 24 hours to think through these matchups a little bit more, what comes to mind with Oklahoma, Alabama? Because this is the game that they're going to focus on as a Friday night game.
Yep, solo shot, yeah.
Right, so they get the stage all to themselves. Last year it was Notre Dame against Indiana. This year it's going to be Oklahoma, Alabama. As I said, Alabama favored by 1.5. Bear in mind that Oklahoma won this game a little bit earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be an incredible environment in Norman, and the focus is going to be on, I think, both of these offenses more than anything, because there's not a lot to question with Oklahoma's defense at this point. They're pretty excellent. The schedule that they played, the playmakers on all 3 levels, the results that they got, you thank the defense, because this offense is around the 80th best in America. So I think you're just sort of racing to 20, racing to 24, and hoping that you'll sort of be pretty well assured that that's going to be good enough. Alabama's defense this year, by and large, has been excellent. It just hasn't had to lead the way in the way that Oklahoma's defense has had to lead the way. And obviously that was highlighted with Oklahoma's very recent win in this rematch matchup. So, yeah, I think it's just like in terms of maybe John Mateer's health and his hand and taking some time to like watch more tape, because I don't know, if you listen to a lot of Oklahoma fans, I think they like him a lot. They like the spirit and the enthusiasm and the leadership of John Mateer. But then like you watch games from a higher angle and you're just like, he's just missing receivers. So hopefully this time is good for the game plan and the reps in practice for John Mateer to get time. And Alabama wise, it's just like figuring out their offensive line ahead of Oklahoma, figuring out their game plan and getting rid of the ball quickly, as we saw Ty Simpson being hounded and forced into mistakes, and just sort of, I guess it's sort of the time for a reset. Who resets best in this matchup, I think, is going to be a good focus.
When these teams played back on November the 15th, you may recall, and in case you don't, I'm going to remind you now, one member of this broadcasting duo predicted the exact final score, and that was me.
Yeah. Well, when you bet against Alabama weekly, you're just going to start nailing things eventually, even if they're a good team. This was one of those weeks.
Which apparently I've done. We had some folks write in that I've bet against Alabama, not to lose,
but against
outright,
the spread,
but against the spread a good number of times this past season now.
We both had Oklahoma in that game, to be clear.
We had Oklahoma
Yeah.
in that game. 23-21 was the final. And I remember my big takeaway from it was just how much pressure Oklahoma got on Ty Simpson. And if you think what has happened to Alabama now since that matchup back on November the 15th, it's been a bunch of teams trying to dial up the pressure on him.
Yeah.
We saw it from Auburn. We obviously saw it from Georgia. These teams have proven rather successful at getting to Ty Simpson, upsetting his balance a bit. Alabama has not really been able to run the football this year, so it's truly all in the arm of Ty Simpson. If you're getting to him, if you're upsetting that rhythm, we've seen it a couple times now. You can have some success. Even though Auburn didn't win, they blitzed like every play, it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be a bit of a template now that Oklahoma has set since knocking off Alabama earlier this year. And I would expect that we're going to see a lot of the same stuff in this matchup. I have not seen the big reset yet on the Alabama side. It's part of why I was, more skeptical than almost everybody about Alabama getting into this playoff field.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to have their work cut out for them to block what is going to be a ferocious Oklahoma pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing they got to deal with, and where my mind goes first with it. And secondly, I think you said exactly where I'm leaning on the Oklahoma offense side.
Yeah.
We haven't done the full research for this game. We'll do a preview and all that, but snap judgment, Oklahoma's got to get better on offense. They might be able to win this game solely with defense because I think they've established a bit of a track record for that now against Alabama. They know how to do it. But the deeper they go into this thing, if they've got Indiana in the next round,
Yeah.
you're going to score some points. You're going to have to score some points. Now, Indiana only needed 13 to beat Ohio State. Maybe you don't need to score points. Maybe you can get into a bit of a defensive slugfest, but I just think that's a lot to assume when you go up against what is otherwise a high-scoring offense in Indiana, that you're just going to be able to contain them to 17 points.
Nice little Kelvin Sampson bowl there, by the way. Oklahoma, Indiana. Sorry.
It is.
I love connective tissue. You're totally right. Totally right that among the power conference teams in the playoff, so I guess among the top 10 teams, Oklahoma's offense is the worst unit on the field.
We'll see. See where this goes.
Yeah.
We got a rematch. Texas A&M Miami is, for my money, the most interesting matchup in round one.
Okay.
Again, A&M favored by 4 points. This is, in effect, the two teams beat Notre Dame.
Not in effect. It is. It just is. Yeah. And I
A&M
guess
beat 'em
Alabama.
41-40?
Alabama beat Notre Dame, just in a more vague way. Yeah.
In a more vague way.
Yeah.
A&M won back in, early part of the year, week 3, week 2, whatever it was, 41-40. Botched extra point by Tyler Buckner on the Notre Dame side. Miami won that one, week 1 against Notre Dame in Coral Gables in Miami, 27-24. So, upon seeing this matchup, my first thought was I'm going to go heavy on Texas A&M. I like the fact that they're hosting a game. I think they've got better balance across the board than Miami does. I also want to be careful when I do my research to not underestimate Miami, because Miami is very good along the lines. Miami has a bona fide playmaker and true freshman Malachi Toney. They've got a veteran quarterback in Carson Beck who has played in many a big game and will not be prone to, wilting in a matchup like this.
Wait, hold on. Am I to understand you don't feel like Carson Beck can wilt in a big game? And
I know he can, but I don't think that is my starting point when I talk about Miami.
Okay.
So I think this is a dangerous team in this tournament. I think they are built from the inside out in a way that makes them very viable to make a run. I just like Texas A&M better in this moment, which is why I think I would lean Aggies. Do you have a differing point of view?
I don't know my lean yet, because there are certain arguments to be made that the best playmaker in this game is Malachi Toney for Miami, although the receiver, you can say Casey Concepcion fits that bill with what he does on special teams and at receiver, so I'd be fine with that. If you want to make the argument that Miami's defensive line is the best unit in that game, I think I'm okay with it. If you want to make the argument that what Mike Elko does with this defense, especially in the second halves of these games, is maybe the scariest element of this game, I'm okay with that. honestly, to me, like the Underthink Express says, which quarterback has fewer diarrhea throws, right?
Diarrhea.
Like, which quarterback...
Where did you find that? What is that clip from?
It's Morgan Freeman in a drug commercial. A Truby? I think that's which one it was. Did I just say diarrhea throws because I could play that clip?
Diarrhea.
It's entirely possible.
You played it the other day.
I know.
I was like, what is going on here? Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
To me, it's just like, okay, a quarterback had a nightmare of a night and let 3 to 5 throws get away from him. Not necessarily interceptions, but 3 just like abysmal throws, and that ended up being the difference. I don't know who I'm describing between Marcel Reed and Carson Beck, who both have very high ceilings and very low floors this season specifically. So that to me is like who grows into the moment and who wilts away in the moment, I think is going to be a big factor here.
And, you know, Marcel Reed, given his mobility, is a huge X factor.
Totally.
He is a matchup nightmare, especially when you get the best version of Marcel Reed. The other thought I have about this matchup, and you know it because it came up when we were talking about Miami versus Notre Dame, going all the way back to that first matchup. A lot was made of the fact that it was a 10-carry, 33-yard performance by Jeremiah Love. They did a pretty good job containing Notre Dame's ground attack. Again, you've heard me argue many times over, it was a terrible game plan. They didn't know what they had in C.J. Carr. They definitely played it too close to the vest, but the game is over and Miami won.
Right.
This game is going to be, I think, a really, really good test of the Texas A&M ground assault. Because if they're not able to get it going on the ground, even though Marcel Reed has definitely improved as a passer this year, and I think that's very evident if you watch any of A&M this year.
Okay.
But without that balance, I think it makes it much harder to attack this Miami defense. Remember, this is a really, really solid Miami defensive front. They know how to get after the passer. If you can introduce something of a ground game, if you can give the front, the guys behind them in the second layer of the defense, something more to think about, it makes that A&M offense all the more explosive. And they do have explosive playmakers across the board. But you got to get that ground game going.
Yeah.
They've been good at it all year. This will be, I think, a unique test for them going up against a Miami front that's been very, very good by and large against the ground.
Yeah, I agree. And also, it should be noted that, like, neither one of these teams has played incredible offenses consistently this year. So these will be some of the better offenses. Like, Texas A&M had a stretch where, like, they're playing South Carolina, they're playing a beat-up Mizzou. LSU is obviously a nightmare. Arkansas good, but, like, Florida was a nightmare this year. And same goes for what Miami saw down the stretch, by and large. And so this is going to be obviously a raised ceiling environment in terms of like the pop of both of these offenses.
And then we've got the 6 and the 11, the 5 and the 12. Ole Miss playing host to Tulane again. We saw this game earlier in the year, 45-10, was not particularly close.
No.
Situation has changed at Ole Miss, new coach.
Be specific. What happened?
A lot of distractions, right? I mean, there's a lot's gone on since these teams played last, not the least of which is both coaches for both teams going elsewhere, even though John Summerall is hanging around for this one. And then on the Oregon JMU side, did not play during the regular season. Bob Chesney is going to be playing in the same conference, coaching in the same conference before long as he makes the move over to UCLA. So this is going to be his first taste of what the Oregon Ducks provide. This one will be played in Eugene. Of these two matchups, take yourself out of like your Oregon bubble for a minute.
Right.
Of these two matchups, which one to you is the most interesting of the two matchups?
I still think it's Tulane, Ole Miss. From what, of course, the narrative perspective of Ole Miss and what they look like without Lane Kiffin and all the drama that surrounded that program. And like maybe this is a thing that helps to galvanize Ole Miss, right? That like everybody's writing them off, including their own head coach who decided a few weeks ago that he'd rather be elsewhere, which it's his prerogative. That's fine. That maybe this is something that sort of helps to bring this team together. And I mean, Tulane has a transitive ACC conference championship, right? Tulane as a program, did they win the Cotton Bowl like 3 or 4 years ago, right? They beat USC in like a shootout. So the ceiling of this program, I think, is a little bit higher than James Madison. And given the uncertainty about what exactly Ole Miss is going to look like, I know we have the certainty of what this this matchup looks like when everything is sort of uneven playing during the regular season. Ole Miss was 5 touchdowns better. But at this point, you can at least talk yourself into Tulane being a better form team, albeit losing their head coach, as you mentioned as well, but that they've grown into something after, look, Jake Retzlaff joined this program like an hour and a half before the season started. So he's had time to gel in this system. They won the conference. They looked overwhelming on defense against North Texas. It's North Texas. So I think that at least has the higher potential for a competitive 2.5 quarters before maybe Ole Miss runs away with it. That's my view.
I actually think the other game is more interesting.
Okay, tell me why. To quote the Backstreet Boys, tell me why.
James Madison on defense is really intriguing to me. And if you watched the championship game the other night, you were undoubtedly left with a lot to be desired with this JMU offense.
Yeah.
You run the ball. But the offense was not, I mean, I really wanted more from a team that I had talked up as a playoff participant. We did not see that. But on defense, the defense came through in a really big way. This is going to be obviously a much different test for the Dukes, going all the way up to the Pacific Northwest, playing one of the best offenses in the country, the 5-seed Oregon. But one of the conversations you and I have had, I think, frequently about Oregon is how much is real, how much is assumed, how good is this team really? There haven't been a whole lot of tests for Oregon, right? They struggled on the road at Penn State, at least down the stretch. They struggled. They ended up winning that one in overtime. They obviously lost to Indiana. These are teams that we perceive to be much better than JMU.
Oh, they struggled on the road against Iowa in the rain. That was a slugfest, yeah. You
know, there have been a couple of these moments for Oregon, in particular against teams that play defense.
Sure.
Where you just sort of wonder, like, okay, what are we in for here with this team? I am not saying JMU is going to beat Oregon. I do not believe that. Maybe it's more a question of the point spread. But I think JMU is really feisty on defense. And at least that side of their game is not something to be too underestimated. I think for at least a chunk of this game, and maybe it's only a half or half of a quarter, I don't know. But I think for some portion of this game, you're going to see JMU's defense step up and maybe provide a little bit more resistance than might meet the eye when you see 5 versus 12 and a 21-point spread.
Would you wager on James Madison to cover that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Probably won't.
And to be fair, the question that you are asking is just like, what are you most intrigued by? What could be like a weird thing that could happen that goes against the assumption that Oregon wins and Ole Miss wins easily? So I understand.
I mean, if I were betting on one of these two
G5
schools, it would almost certainly be Tulane.
Okay.
It would 100% be Tulane, given the distractions at Ole Miss, given what Tulane does on offense with Jake Retzlaff. I think it's a little too Retzlaff heavy. Honestly, it looks a lot like his offense last year at BYU. I talked about this on the recap show.
Mm-hmm.
But there's at least a familiarity there. Tulane saw Ole Miss. They know what they're in for here. Maybe they can use some of what they learned that first time around to make this one a little bit closer. And the fact that the point spread is under 3 scores is telling in its own right.
Okay.
Given the fact that it was a 35-point game the first time around. So Vegas giving Tulane, I think, a little bit more respect than they are JMU at this point. Maybe they just think Oregon's way better. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were wagering, I'd probably pick Tulane. I wouldn't go JMU. I'm just interested in the JMU defense to see how it handles a Lamborghini like Oregon.
I think I saw somewhere that Oregon's potential path to the national championship runs through 3 of like the 5 best run defenses in America, just from a statistical standpoint. In Texas Tech, and I guess it would be Indiana after if Oregon were to beat Texas Tech and James Madison. I looked at the offenses that JMU played and what they were able to accomplish outside of playing JMU. I'm not going to say JMU is crazy inflated in terms of their defensive numbers, but because they perform like a good defense should perform against these offenses, I just think we're talking about a different level here, and I think Oregon will score a lot of points.
What kind of cheesy motivational device is Dan Lanning going to use to get this team fired up to play James Madison?
I don't know. He'd tell you that I don't need to motivate these guys. These guys are already motivated. It's the college football playoff. It's the opportunity to start a path to the national championship. I don't need to, bring extra motivation. But yes, they understand what the bracket looks like. They're playing the weakest team in this 12-team field. And the fact that they're playing at home, like we kind of had this conversation a little bit when Oregon played Liberty. Was it the Fiesta Bowl?
Yep.
We were like, they get dealt the hand in the postseason in a bowl system that not a lot of people feel great about. Go Irish.
We'll talk about that next.
It was one of the least motivating external situations we've had, right? Like, why would Oregon get up for Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl when they're, in this as sort of a way to include more teams? They beat them like 59-7, right? That was an undefeated Liberty team playing from
Yeah, that wasn't even close.
I think whatever worked then with Bo Nix and all the guys that played in that game, Bucky Irving, it's gonna work against James Madison with actual real stakes on the line here.
Speaking of other bowl games,
yes.
Again, we'll do a full preview for all of the first round college football playoff matches. We'll do full previews for all of the games throughout the course of the tournament, and we are going to have a game out at verballers.com. Last year it was free for all. All you had to do was sign up as a paid or free member. We're going to do that again. We call it Bowl Bingo. I'm in the process of getting that spun up right now and built so that we can send out notice to all of our people. So stay tuned for that. You're going to want to pay attention to all of these bowl games. We may not start that game the first run of bowl games, but certainly over the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so, you're going to see a lot coming out about us playing Bowl Bingo, and it was a lot of fun last year. Here are some of the other bowl matchups of note. Okay, I'm not going to read through all of these. We do have some new sponsors this year, which is always a lot of fun. But here are a couple matchups that jump out to me. On December the 27th, the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl features my once predicted national championship game. Penn State is playing Clemson.
The best.
They're just playing in the Pinstripe Bowl and not in the national championship game.
You gotta go, Ty. You gotta go.
Go figure. Other interesting games. LSU versus Houston. Houston is favored by 3 points.
Yeah, I understand that. Nice little regional matchup as well.
The ReliaQuest Bowl, another year, another really good matchup. Last year it was Michigan-Alabama. This year it is Iowa versus Vanderbilt.
Great. Very watchable.
Love it.
Yep.
Speaking of Michigan, they're going to the Citrus Bowl, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl these days, squaring off against Texas. That's a big-time blue blood matchup right there.
Yeah. You'd have to go all the way back to 2024 for the last time they played, right? Quinn Ewers in Ann Arbor. But nevertheless, really good opportunity for, I think, Michigan more specifically to jump into 2026 on a positive note. Texas probably disappointed they're not in the playoff, but as we'll get to, I'm sure, with the Notre Dame conversation, there's plenty of positive to take away from extra practices and extra time together.
The Music City Bowl, Tennessee versus Illinois. Interesting matchup. Like that one.
Sure.
The Holiday Bowl, now sponsored by Trust and Will. I have no idea what that is. Do you?
No.
Trust and Will Holiday Bowl, Arizona against SMU should be fun. Really fun matchup there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
It's an estate planning app, maybe? Trust and Will?
Trust and Will. That makes sense.
Yeah. What was the last one you said?
Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Pop-Tarts Bowl. Sure.
This brings us back to Notre Dame. Notre Dame not playing in this game. It's going to be Georgia Tech versus BYU. BYU favored by 2.5 points. So that in and of itself is a really good matchup. Pop-Tarts Bowl got a good matchup there.
Depending who's on the field. Yes.
Depends who's on the field. Obviously, that goes for all of these games.
Yeah.
But Georgia Tech versus BYU is a good matchup. I'm excited about that one. BYU should have the bulk of its players, if not all of its players, playing in that game. Notre Dame opted out of the bowl. Notre Dame opted out.
Not the only team this season, right? Iowa State and Kansas State.
The only team to opt out that isn't going through a coaching change.
Right.
But both Iowa State and K-State have opted out of their bowl games as well. Notre Dame, though, definitely getting, I think, a little bit more of the press on this. I'll be honest with you, it is not the best optics. It is not the best optics for Notre Dame and Pete Bavacqua and this program as a whole to sort of just cast bowl season aside. It definitely presents as sour grapes. And I'm a Notre Dame fan saying this.
Mm-hmm.
I am just as disappointed. I'm sure they are much more disappointed, being so they're in the building and I'm not. So I get that level of disappointment. Pete Bavacqua, he did an interview earlier today. We're recording this on Monday. He talked with Dan Patrick about the process. And the second they find out that there was a gigantic rug pull and they're not going to be in the playoff, that's when the phone starts ringing off the hook, different bowl invitations and whatnot. And they put it up to the team captains. And it doesn't sound like they wanted to play a game with guys who are backups. They didn't want to be out there a shell of their former self.
Yeah. And
so it is what it is. They're not going to a bowl game. Honestly, I think the biggest news that came out of that interview with Pete Bavacqua, is that there is some very obvious tension now between Notre Dame and the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
And this stems from a whole multitude of things, but the ACC was not shy about lobbying for Miami. Miami, of course, is a full member of the ACC. Notre Dame has a special agreement, a partial membership agreement with the ACC where they play 5 ACC games a year.
Right.
Sounds as if that relationship is strained. Pete Bavacqua said as much. What comes of this now is anybody's guess. I have seen wild speculation out on the interwebs that they might sue the ACC. Based on the comments I heard from Pete Bavacqua, I'm not sure anything's actually going to happen. He's like, we'll move past it, but the relationship is strained, maybe permanently damaged. What comes of this will certainly be fodder for the offseason. We are grateful, at least in that sense, that we will have content to talk about, and Notre Dame always moves the needle because you either love them or you hate them.
Right.
Where this goes next, I have no idea. But Notre Dame is none too pleased with the fact that the ACC was out there politicking for the Canes. I think they ran the Notre Dame-Miami game on loop for like 48 hours on the ACC network.
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
So,
yeah, finish. I have some thoughts. Continue.
So that I think is at least partially the source of the tension here, if there is any that exists, if you believe Notre Dame's athletic director.
Right. So, I mean, what do we know about, like, the timeline of this? Like, did Notre Dame the night before, like, all get on the same page? If we don't make the playoff, we're just out? Was it an emotional decision? I think in the sort of afterglow?
Yeah, I think part of the animus here stems from the fact that obviously the ACC was out there politicking for Miami.
Right.
But in addition to that, Notre Dame was led to believe for a month that they were in.
I agree.
They were led to believe by this stupid weekly ranking show that they had proven all they needed to prove and that they were safely in. They had talked about it in previous iterations of the Tuesday ranking show that they were being compared to Alabama, not necessarily Miami. So everything that they had been led to believe was that they were going to get in.
By
Dumb. Those dudes are so dumb.
Thank you, Mikey.
You were just waiting for that one.
I was sitting.
You wanted to play it last
I was
episode.
crouching tiger, hidden audio dropper. Continue.
You forgot about that one last time. You were upset that you didn't play it.
I didn't play
yesterday.
that when we were talking about the committee, and it haunted my dreams last night.
But look, the committee made Notre Dame think that they were in.
Right.
And so I understand on a certain level, if you're working this from the Notre Dame angle, they were told nothing but good things for a month straight.
Right.
The people that put these rankings together can lump ESPN in there if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
They strung Notre Dame along for a month. Do you blame them for being pissed that they did the rug pull at the 11th hour? No, and he himself said, I understand it. They understand the argument for Miami. And some of the tension here that he gave voice to was not directed at any of the teams in the tournament. It was more directed at the ACC. It was more directed at the process for picking the teams involved in the college football playoff. I think separate from Notre Dame sitting out the bowl and whatever you feel from that perspective, what he gave voice to is what we gave voice to on this show and what a lot of other people have talked. Andy Staples wrote a long article on it over at On3. Notre Dame was strung along through this process. They created drama, whoever was in charge of this, by keeping Notre Dame ahead of Miami, only dropping small breadcrumbs along the way that maybe at the last second, Miami could do something might occur that changes the committee's mind.
Right.
They built up this drama. They used Notre Dame to get people interested in that drama.
Right.
And then they pulled the rug on them at the last second. I get why they're pissed. I'm pissed as a fan. So that, I think, is where this conversation is going to go next from the Notre Dame side as it relates to both the college football playoff, the format in the future, and in addition, what their relationship looks like with the ACC. Because there are other sports on the Notre Dame side that are full members of the ACC.
Right.
It's not like football where they're just sort of half pregnant. If, in fact, that relationship has been strained to an extent, what do they do about that? Will be the next place this conversation goes.
Well, I mean, the other part of it is the punitive nature towards ESPN, because ESPN's hand in the playoff, in the messaging of everything with the reaction, or I guess it would be the release of the weekly rankings, and then the fact that ESPN runs bowl season as well, right? That what Notre Dame is doing is punishing ESPN by removing themselves from ESPN's airwaves and thus removing a ratings giant from their bowl season.
And that was Andy's point. Andy's point was he gets it from the standpoint of, okay, you used us to create all this drama. We're not going to let you use us now for ratings.
Right.
Which you could argue is a little bit petty, and maybe it is, but I get that thinking.
Right.
Like, I would probably be of similar mind if it were me.
I mean, look, we're also sort of wading into the waters of the sort of quieter part of the college football business conversation, in that there are basically two entities, and Notre Dame is not fully a part of either one of these entities, but between Fox and the Big Ten and ESPN and the SEC. And when we watch on ESPN's airwaves, Miami beat Notre Dame by 3 close, and then Alabama get absolutely demolished in front of the world the day before the playoff rankings, and have that not be affected, and have like half of the talking heads say, well, Notre Dame should join a conference so they can play in a conference championship game. And then at the same time, have Alabama play in a conference championship game and have that not affect things in the slightest. You have the same network speaking out of both sides of its own mouth. And, you know, starting the playoff selection, the final playoff selection show with just pure Alabama messaging, right? That was just like, it really had everybody on the same page with like, we all agree that Alabama should be in the playoff, and it's just not like a question about it, right? Like, and like, let's toss it to Greg McElroy and Nick Saban for their takes.
That's how it was for Herbie and Fowler.
Sure.
During the SEC championship game, and I tweeted it out, and it went crazy, and I got a lot of pushback from people, and I don't care.
Right.
But for a good chunk of that game, they were allergic, and it was more Herbie than Fowler.
Right.
Seemingly allergic to the mere idea of dropping Alabama at all. And I'm not even talking about out of the playoff.
Right.
But
the gall. Right.
The gall, right? And I know it's also been floating around that something like of the previous 16 conference championship game losers, 15 of those teams dropped in the subsequent poll.
At least one place. Yeah.
At least one spot. The only one over the last 3 years that did not even budge was Alabama.
Right.
Why is that? Let me do my Windhorse. Why do you think that is?
Shout out Brian Windhorst. Notable not SEC fan, Ohio State fan Brian Windhorst. I understand from a Notre Dame perspective. I do think it's sour grapes. Like that's the first line of this. That like, if you're thinking about your program, if you're thinking about practices and getting younger players reps and like bonding on the, you know, traveling, and it's a road spot against, you know, a high quality team in BYU, that there's a lot of positive to take away from Notre Dame sort of gritting its teeth and playing in this bowl game. So I think that's the first line, is this is sour grapes, and it's not a great look. And Notre Dame probably should have, like, I guess they couldn't have just like taken the night to think on it and sleep on it, because you got to commit. But I also get it from a Notre Dame perspective, where you feel as if this is an ESPN tournament that they are deciding through their own repeated messaging. I don't think the ACC network thing is a big deal. Like, I think it's like a fun tweet, Zeet on the X the Everything app, but I don't know who's watching the ACC network in earnest to like pick up on what their programming rhythms are. All due respect to EJ Manuel and the fine people at the ACC network. But I get it from Notre Dame's perspective that you're like, the ACC should kind of have our back on a certain level, given that we play a lot of ACC games. And I get it from the ACC network thing, where in the ACC messaging of like, Miami's our best hope, they're our best team, and we should politic.
And they're a full member.
And they're a full member.
Yeah.
That it puts them in a weird position. But I really do understand it from Notre Dame's perspective of just like, it does feel like an ESPN invitational that, you know, if we play our cards right, the people who are saying that we are a clear top 10 team all season or the back half of the season will continue to think that after we don't play a game, Miami doesn't play a game, and none of the teams we collectively played play a game, and then we are bumped out. And like,
yeah, I mean, look,
that's the thing that I get it, but I don't know who this is truly effectively punishing other than Notre Dame's players.
I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I do think it's sour grapes. On some minuscule level, at a minimum, it is definitely some sour grapes going on.
Yep.
And I think the lesson learned for the committee is A, we don't need a weekly ranking show.
Yeah.
Even if you're going to do one, maybe do 3 instead of 5.
I would say, here's what you do. You do it the week before Halloween, and you do it after conference championship weekend. And you let people surmise and make guesses, but there's too many ways to paint yourself in a corner and put yourself in a box. You shouldn't do this. A mid-year check-in and a final ranking.
And if you are going to insist on doing weekly rankings, rank teams appropriately first. If you were that set and determined to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame, and I understand the argument for it. And I made the argument yesterday when we recorded. I understand it. That, to me, seems logical that Miami would get in over Notre Dame. If they're close and if one played the other, and the team that won on the field should get the spot. I'm not arguing that. But rank them that way.
Yeah.
Don't create this drama. Don't kind of talk yourself into one thing and then gradually tell us, well, with BYU losing, that bumped up Miami. They were side by side, and then we gave the tiebreaker to Miami. Did not play, and they jumped a couple spots. Okay. Yeah. So that in and of itself, strip out all the other context. That in and of itself is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we mentioned this before. This happened because they wanted it to happen. They wanted an ACC team in. They didn't like the look of leaving out a major conference, and they decided that Miami was more of an ACC team than Notre Dame, and they had the head-to-head to justify like a very specific bump up, and they did it because they wanted to. I don't know.
Anyway, this will be very interesting now to see what happens next. We're recording this again on a Monday afternoon. Notre Dame's athletic director is going to give a press conference.
Great.
Tuesday at noon. See what he has to say. I don't know. If there's trouble in paradise with the ACC, it could open up the playbook for a whole host of things, Dan. And I don't have any clue where it goes next, but just something to kind of keep on the radar. Notre Dame's definitely up in its fifis right now, and there's a chance it could get a little weirder. So that's what we're here for. We will do our part to kind of keep you up to speed. Again, there are many other bowl games that are going to take place during bowl season. We have a bowl game that we are going to play that all are invited to take part in. Details on that are forthcoming. I'm still working on it.
What's the website?
I think the website's going to be playbowlbingo.com.
Okay.
Don't go there yet and set it up.
Right.
If you go now, I think you'll get
Do we own it? I don't want somebody buying it. And
I have it. I just renewed it.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
We're good. But I got to set the page up. I got to get everything going. So more to come on that front. Bowl Bingo was a big hit last year when we played. You played for fabulous prizes. It is not your standard issue bowl pool, even a confidence pool, which we did for many years. You pick a couple things each week. The winners get fabulous prizes, but it's very low stress.
Great.
You don't have to play the full way through if you don't want to. Very casual. Play with friends and family. Truly, people really enjoyed it last year, so we're going to do it again.
Love to hear it. can't wait to play. That's all I have. I don't know if there's any other topics you wanted to get to.
I think we're going to leave it there today, okay?
Okay. We have Army-Navy, by the way, Saturday.
We do have Army.
We've got the Heisman.
We do have the Heisman. We're going to talk about that in the next episode.
Oh, good.
Folks, hit follow, hit subscribe if you made it this far. If you like what we do, if you want to support the effort here over at Solid Verbal headquarters, we'd appreciate it. Do tell your friends. Do check out verballers.com. That is where we go. If we want to give you ad-free episodes, bonus content, Discord server access, playing many a game that we have running here over at SVHQ, verballers.com, verballers.com, or you can go to patreon.com/solidverbal. Both will take you to the same spot.
Yes.
Dan Rubenstein, I will talk to you again, I guess on Thursday. Do it again.
Can't wait, Ty. And for the final time, this episode.
Diarrhea.
That's it. I'm 5
For
years
that
old.
guy, Dan,
Yeah.
for myself, Ty, we'll catch you all in a few days. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.